Ladles and jelly spoons, births and gurgles. My name is Johnbonne, your number one source for number 2 games. And today I proudly present to you the Spyro 2 instruction manual. It's amazing! Like, look at this. Look at all the information in here. It's got like, it says here that Allura is the unofficial leader of the Avalari. And I always just thought she was like queen or princess or something like that. But she's the unofficial leader. Like, how did she get that? It's amazing! And Moneybags isn't just Moneybags, he's Sir Moneybags. He got a knighthood. Again, from who, from where, how, I've no idea. I've got to play the game again to find out. And it talks about the controls and speedways and the credits and things in German, schwimmen and como empezar una partida nueva. But you're not interested in any of that, are you? Neither am I. I mean, what else am I supposed to do until Hallololoween? This is as interesting as a walking simulator. Wait a minute. Ladles and jelly spoons, births and gurgles. My name is Johnbonne, your number one source for number 2 games, and I proudly present to you Walktober! I normally keep horror games for Hallololoween because I'm a total pansy and that's the day I get to be an adult, but until then we just have to pretend to be by playing some walking simulators. You might be asking, what are walking simulators? As if it weren't obvious enough already. The term walking simulator was originally used as a derogatory term to describe games with minimal gameplay or no features at all, but today it seems many tend to wear it on their sleeve. The typical walking simulator is usually identified as just having you walk along a path while having some story told at you and you're supposed to be impressed. I may sound like I have contempt for the genre, and while I did when the term first came about, I don't really mind them so much now. The only problem I have with a lot of them is that they do exactly the same as each other, but the quality and the pretentiousness of the story and the way it's told differs. It's hard to say where walking simulators truly began. I mean, the earliest example I can think of is Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, where all he did was walk around hell and talk to the ghost of the poet Virgil. In terms of video games though, I would point to games like Myst, especially the version where you have full movement rather than pointing and clicking. Walktober's content is going to be very specific and very niche, so I'll have to try quite hard to make each review interesting and informative while showing a variety of how things can be done well. And not so well. Also bear in mind that I'm going in with no prior experience with the genre, so you'll have my completely fresh perspective from this point on. We're going to kick off, or rather leisurely stroll through Walktober with the most famous of walking simulators, Dear Esther. Or Esther, I don't know how to pronounce the name. Anyway, it's by the Chinese Room, the guys behind Amnesia and Machine for Pigs, so with such a big name behind it, this should be good. Right? To begin with, I wasn't expecting much from this game besides it being pretentious and myself being scornful. For a game that's been heralded as the best of its kind since its release 2 years ago, I had to wonder why. I mean, was the praise deserved, or was it just mindless drones of the genre preaching to the choir? You play as a bloke. That's really it, you just play as a bloke. And I say a bloke rather than a man or a guy or a dude because he's from England and all males here are blokes. Well, some of them are anyway. He's a bit of a posh bloke who likes to read aloud letters to his friend Esther, telling them, and I say them because I don't know if Esther is a male or female. I really should have checked this up before I did this review. Anyway, he tells them about his travels to the island, its history and landmarks. It's all told through his perspective, and it's rather skewed in places, making it very hard to follow the multiple plot points that are going on. In some narrations, he tells of his troubles arriving at the Nameless Island, and in some he talks about his colleague Donnelly and their series of syphilitic ramblings. It all makes for a soothing and often pleasant experience. But it's never unpleasant in a bad way, at least not until the second chapter. Dear Esther's mood borders on quaint and eerie at first, as you may have your suspicions as to this being a horror game with jump scares around every corner, or sightings of a monster in the distance that'll loom ever closer, but there's never proof of such things. As the game moves on, it transitions elegantly from eerie to spooky, and then spooky to scary as the player character talks in graphic detail about an injury they had. Their femur is shattered and the overdose of what few painkillers they managed to scavenge from the shipwrecks has kept him calm, but they're also turning him into a madman. Or perhaps it's the island doing that to him.
Climbing down to the caves, I slipped and fell and have injured my leg. I think the femur is broken. It is clearly infected. The skin has turned a bright, tight pink, and the pain is crashing in on waves, winter tides against my shoreline, drowning out the ache of my stones. I struggled back to the bothy to rest, but it has become clear that there is only one way this is likely to end. The medical supplies I looted from the trawler have suddenly found their purpose. They will keep me lucid for my final ascent.
You don't see the injury or characters like Jakobson or Donnelly mentioned in the story sometimes, but you do see their influences on the island. Strange markings like chemical formulas and broken sentences and even more broken English are scrawled on the walls, a tribute to the tradition of carving white lines into the mountains when someone had died there. And you can't cause yourself any injuries anyway. Before the story really kicked me in the feels 20 minutes in, I threw myself down a gigantic chasm. You know, for a laugh, and was then brought back with no real explanation of why I'd survived. Why not have it lead down a different route rather than just have me respawn? I mean, there's plenty of falls which would kill me that I survive, but the narrative says it's okay. You'll notice these in chapters 2 and 3 the most, but it's here where you couldn't give a damn about such things because it shows off its beauty to an extent I've never felt since Spyro 2 Gateway to Glimmer's Winter Tundra lobby. It takes real talent to just have grey caves with stalagmites, but make it awe-inspiring with its use of lighting and water physics. And in the final chapter where the moon is at its brightest, you see the full power of the lighting effects, with its simple candles doing a lot to blow you away with their divine lucidity. Not to mention it's here where you finally realise who Donnelly and the legendary Hermit are, what happened to all the letters you sent. And I think most importantly, you get a conclusion to a story which later feels like incoherent, furious, insane delusions, but makes sense at the very last moment of the game, and by Jove, that ending. I needed CPR to get my heart going again, because to say it took my breath away was an understatement. With that, I'd like to give you my thoughts on the visuals and soundtrack. Leisurely. The first chapter failed to impress me with its graphical fidelity, but it still made some realistic and stunning set pieces. I noticed far too often that the foliage clipping into the walls, and as you move through the bushes and grass, it wasn't very well animated in my opinion. The repeated textures didn't help either, as there were loads of times where I noticed the same plastic bags trodden into the sand, and other things like broken glass and smashed badgers. But again, I have to balance this out with the excellent use of lighting. You won't use your torch after the first chapter, which flicks itself on in a dark room, so the unnatural glows and the booming lights from candles have to replace it, and they do a great job to say the least. No games show the importance, at least the power of light effects quite like this one. As for the voice work, it's stellar, and when combined with the incredibly atmospheric music, it's hard to focus on one or the other. It adds so much depth and mystery to an already welcoming game.
Blind with panic, deaf with the roar of the caged traffic, heart stopped on the road to Damascus, Paul sat at the roadside hunched up like a gull, like a bloody gull. As useless and as doomed as a syphilitic cartographer, a dying goat herd, an infected leg, a kidney stone, blocking the traffic bound for Sanford and Exeter. He was not drunk, Esther. He was not drunk at all. All his roads and his tunnels and his paths led inevitably to this moment of impact. This is not a recorded natural condition. He should not be sat there with his chemicals and his circuit diagrams. He should not be sat there at all.
Before we saunter our way to the glowing beacon that is the end of this review, we'd like to descend into madness with my final thoughts. Despite me being a games reviewer and this quite frankly not being a video game, I still know a good audio-visual experience when I see one. You don't have much to do in the game, that's true, but what may seem like a slog to people who haven't played the game turns into a tranquil walk for those who dare to pick it up. And in my opinion, that's one of the best ways to go into this game, or even the entire genre. I had a whale of a time following the stories that the narrator tells out of order, and while the game is incredibly linear, going the extra few steps and spending a minute or two going elsewhere for a snippet of narrative is well worth the walk. The only true complaint I have is with the controls. They're not so slow that you'd want to strangle yourself with your keyboard and mouse wires, but not so fast that you can fully enjoy navigating the island. Without an option to speed up running, I don't really want to play the game again anytime soon. Still, the game's runtime for me was an hour long, and even if you look around the entire island for every single plot point, you can't make it last much longer than 2 or at a stretch 3 hours. The 4 chapters are short and sweet, but the slow transition between them with the huge loading screens doesn't help. For £6.99 it was worth every penny, and I'm loath that I didn't buy the soundtrack. Perhaps I will, and maybe play some of it as I edit this review. We'll have to see. Maybe I'll just use some Sonic music as I always do. Anyway, it's a great game for patient people and those who want to see how good a walking simulator can be. An ideal price for the ideal story, especially for the ideal mindset. We're not done just yet though, we've still got a few more games to go through before we reach the end of Walktober, and I do hope you'll join me for the upcoming reviews. Until the next time, I'm Johnbonne, your #1 source for #2 games. Ta for now.